Hipgnosis was in existence for about 15 years, between 1968 to about 1983. During that period of time, we did a lot of album covers for some of the biggest bands at the time: Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Paul McCartney, Bad Company, Genesis, Peter Gabriel, Yes. Storm and I wanted to make a book which would be partly illustrative of all the work and partly written. He would write more about the art, about the construction of the work, about the ideas behind it. I, on the other hand, wanted to write more about the cultural side of it, in terms of how it fitted into what was going on at the time, our relationship to the bands themselves, or talk about the humorous moments that we'd had in anecdotes, of which there were many. Storm left Cambridge to go to London to go to the Royal College of Art to study film, and I wasn't going to be left behind, so I went down to London and to work for the BBC as a scenic designer. We decided to share a flat together in South Kensington, and various itinerants went through there, including Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd, and other artists, but it was a sort of homing ground for people around at the time. A friend of Storm's who worked for a publisher said, "Would you do some book covers for us?" We said sure, and we were experimenting at that time with infrared film. But little did we know that we were going to be cowboy book covers. So we got a bunch of mates together, got some costumes, all went down to Richmond Park and shot all these weird and wonderful book covers all in infrared, which looked pretty far out at the time, and the publisher was over the moon. I think we got the equivalent of about $40 for each cover, and we suddenly realised there was money to be made in this. At the same time, Pink Floyd were bringing out their second album. We said, why don't you have a go at doing our album covers? So we did Saucerful of Secrets, which was the first cover we did, which is a combination of Marvel Comics, alchemy, the cosmos, and a sort of little infrared picture of the band. Everybody loved it, and suddenly the manager said to us, I've got some other groups you can do some record covers for. Do you fancy doing work for them? And we were thinking, hey, $80 a time. This sounds great. And within a couple of years, we were in business. We suddenly had a studio, Hasselblad cameras. It was all happening. We used to meet late at night, 2 or 3 times a week, and we'd probably meet from sort of 10 o'clock in the evening till 4 o'clock in the morning. These were specifically think tanks. And then sometimes the meetings, there would be people on the periphery that would be in the room. It was always at Storm's apartment. There would be drug dealers, there would be Japanese groupies, there would be sort of I don't know, the odd tramp that had come in. There would be other designers there. I mean, sometimes there'd be as many as 10 or 15 people. But always in the centre of the room would be Storm and me and Peter sort of talking about things we wanted to do. And they wouldn't necessarily relate to a band in particular or music in particular. It might be that one of us had a great idea. Storm particularly, I suppose, was the main generator of ideas, and he would say, you know, I saw something the other day, I really like this. I would put it in context, perhaps style-wise, and think about how to photograph it and where we could do it, that it would work. And then somebody else would chip in. Suddenly somebody would say, hey, why didn't you do this? Or, that sounds great, man, why didn't you do that? And the next thing I knew, we'd be going along and presenting them to a band. And somebody would say, hey, you know what, I like that idea. I like the idea of a man shaking hands with another man and one of them is on fire being burnt. That's great, let's do that. Right from the get-go, Hipgnosis established a rapport with the artists. People like Paul McCartney, people like Pink Floyd were very happy for me to be in their dressing rooms and other intimate situations photographing them. Led Zeppelin was exciting because it was always dangerous. I mean, it was always something going down. If it wasn't a girl doing cartwheels down the centre of the plane with no clothes on, it was, you know, threats, the money, drama, violence. You know, there was always something going down. It was very exciting. Paul McCartney was a different kettle of fish altogether. He very much always had to be in control of everything and wanted to make sure that everything was absolutely just so. Somebody like Pink Floyd would come along and they might play us the music, they might not. They might give us a title, they might not have one. But we sort of had an inkling of the sort of thing that might be right for them. And I think that they were trusting, and thank God that they were. You know, it was more, we do the music, you get on and do the visuals, and well, let's see what happens. There's a cover which is in the book, which is for Peter Gabriel. We found that if you took a Polaroid photograph of somebody, and you got a a pen or a pencil and you pushed the various layers of colour in the Polaroid around, you could distort the image. And we suggested to Peter that this is what we should do. He loved the idea, so we all sat around destroying this image of Peter's face until we found one that he liked. And he said, that's it, that's the one I want. And why I admired that, because it was dark, it was taking his face and making it grotesque. Another one that I liked particularly is the one we did for Peter Frampton. He was throwing a bucket of water at somebody, and when it hits on the side of the face, the water explodes all around them. Hypnosis and water. For some reason, Freud would have made a field day of this. A lot of our things are to do with swimming, sea, underwater, people in water, divers. House of the Holy, Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page called up the studio and he said, I've seen an album cover that I like. Did you do it? It was Wishbone Ash, Argus. He said, I'd really like you to do the next Led Zeppelin album cover. I said, can I hear the music? He said, nope. I said, do you have a title? He said, no. So I said, is there anything I can go on at all? He said, nope. He said, just come up with some ideas and I need to see them in a couple of weeks' time. I told them two things we'd come up with. One was an image from Arthur C. Clarke's book, Childhood's End. And in the end of the book, all the children on the earth all go up into this great fiery ball into the sky. The second idea was to go to the plain of Nazca in Peru, where there are these amazing shapes which you can only see from the air. And we wanted to go there and dig into the desert the word Zozo, which was the Led Zeppelin logo. The band said, we like both ideas, do whichever one you like. I said, what's the budget? He said, whatever it costs, just get on with it. Storm and I decided that the children going off the end of the earth is probably a more safe bet than trying to dig up the plains of Nazca. So everything was organised, children, chaperones, makeup artists, camera assistants, everything, and I set off to Northern Ireland. When I got there, it poured with rain for a week straight. The whole thing turned out to be an absolute fucking nightmare. I finally realised that what I was trying to do was not going to work. So I took the two children, put them on the rocks, shot it in black and white, and I realised that we could collage the images together because the rocks were octagonal. And so we made up this image out of just two children. We processed the film, we made the collage, and then we rephotographed that and had it all hand tinted. I phoned them up and said it's done. And Peter Grant, the manager, said, well, meet us at Victoria Station and we'll have a look at it there. So I drove there in my little mini car that I had, opened up the trunk, and there it was, and there they were standing. And in those days, of course, somebody like Jimmy Page stood out a mile away. I mean, the guy was dressed all in velvets. I mean, he looked like a fantasy world standing in the middle of a kind of rather grey and dull Victorian station. And there's me with the artwork in the back of in the trunk of the car. Well, a crowd gathered round, about 200 people. And anyway, Jimmy loved it, said it's fantastic, man. I showed him the inside cover, loved it, absolutely fantastic, that's it. Off they walked down the station platform and I got a round of applause from the crowd. It was very memorable. Sometimes out of chaos comes, good stuff. And that's what this book is all about.